Okay. So this is about AZ104 Microsoft Azure Administrator demo. So myself, Shankar. So I am a Microsoft certified trainer. I've been training since last 1 year, and I am also Azure Administrator certified and Azure Solution Architect expert as well. And then I'm also Azure Security Engineer Associate certified. And currently, I'm working for. I've been working on this Azure since last 4 years extensively, and I'm right now working as a solution architect for in helping customers to migrate and build, design, build and design architectures for customers. So this is what I do. So I actually work on multiple different things in Azure. So I have knowledge on almost all of the services in Azure. This is about me, and this is how actually our Microsoft certification path looks like. So right now we are actually trying to learn this. We are actually trying to learn Azure Administrator Associate training. So this is actually we call it as 2-star certification, associate level certification. So before this, you have AZ 900, which is 1-star Azure Fundamentals. So when I train trainees, so a lot of times they ask me questions. So can I directly attempt Azure Administrator certification without actually attempting AZ 900? So I will say yes, because this is only just optional course. So it's not mandatory that you have to complete this to actually start off with the Azure AZ 104. So I'll tell you who will what is the use of this, for whom this will be helpful. So to answer that question, let's say let's say someone X person is working as a Python developer, okay, and he want to get some exposure on Azure. He just wanted to know what is all about in Azure. So that is when you can actually learn this AZ 900 about infrastructure. You can learn AZ 900. Not only AZ 900, we have AI 900, DP 900, SC 900. These are all fundamentals. So these are only going to give you a tour of it. So let's say you are actually going to visit Ramoji Film City. So you'll go in a bus and you will visit everything. So, but you'll not actually utilize any of these things. You'll not go in depth of any of these. So that is how it look like. So it is going to give you a tour of Azure services in Azure, and what is what, and what is the use of what. That information you'll get with this, but you'll not go in deep dive for any of these. You'll not go in deep dive. You'll not troubleshoot. You'll not actually configure any of in detail. So that's about AZ9, and that's the reason. So someone who really want to actually pursue their career in Azure, so they definitely will not go with AZ900. But someone who is already pursuing in some other technology but just want to have some exposure on Azure, then they'll go for it, because they're actually, after they finish this certification, they will still continue to do their other technology, whatever they are working. So and also business leaders, let's say there is a small company CEO who might want to migrate their environment from Azure to from their on premises to Azure. uh, so CEO can actually then, if you want to know what is Azure all about, what services they are going to provide, then he can definitely he will go through this AZ 900, because he'll get some understanding about Azure, how it works. uh, and coming to administrator is something, if you ask me, if you have just 1-star certification AZ 900, will you be able to get a job? I will say, I mean, if you have a knowledge of Azure administrator, but if you only done AZ 900 certification, not yet done AZ 104, then you might. But if you only have AZ 900 knowledge, if you do not have administrator knowledge, you will not be able to secure a job. To secure a job with associate level certification, with this certification, you can secure a job. And again, a lot of people ask me another question that I get most often is, will I get a job directly with just Azure Administrator certification, or do I need to learn anything else? So nowadays, a lot of organizations, what they are doing is, so they are not directly opening this Azure admin as a direct. They are saying they'll give a title as Azure Administrator, but they will actually fine tune this responsibilities, roles and responsibilities little bit. they will actually add some additional components, additional tools maybe. So they might ask you for a PowerShell automation, or they might ask you for Ansible, Terraform. So these are additional components that they will add in your resume. But the majority of the roles and responsibilities you will have belongs to Azure admin itself. Only few additional tools that you'll have that is again case to case. So not all companies will use same tools. So whichever company uses that tool, they might actually add. So that is kind of a fine tuning that they will do for these jobs, Azure admin jobs. So, but the base knowledge for all the jobs will remain same, Azure administrator knowledge. Only few additional tools on a case by case you might have to learn personally, is what I can say. And let's say you already finished this certification, and what will be your next goal? So if you want to pursue further, if you want to grow, so what will be your next future is next thing is a solution architect. So a solution architect will actually design solutions, build a design, and then he will actually hand over to admin team. So he himself might create resources. He might also assign some tasks to administrator, and administrator will create those services in Azure, and then will hand over to the customer. And that's what solution architect will do. He will deal with multiple customers and multiple different designs and scenarios. So this is what you can aim for in long term. Short term, you can have this as your goal. So this is 3-star certificate. It's expert level. This requires little more practical knowledge. So you cannot attempt this with a theoretical knowledge. It is difficult for you to clear this out. Of course, AZ104 also you need some labs. You have to do some practice. So you cannot easily pass. 900 probably there are chances, but 104 and in architect you have 303 and 304. So these will take a little more effort. You have to do at least 6 months to 1 year of practical exposure on Azure. Then you will be able to attempt this exam. But this should give you a job in Azure. So let's say you have finished this course, and you have finished this course and you've done the certification also, and you want to try for organization, try for opportunities. Which role you should try, and what will be your roles and responsibilities in case if you get placed in any organization. So basically, a cloud administrator will manage services, cloud services. So a cloud administrator will manage cloud. You might have some doubts like I don't even have any basics of cloud, what is cloud, and all this info. Do not worry, because I have next tomorrow I'm going to spend 3 hours of time only for cloud basics, virtualization, active directory, storage and backup basics, because that is kind of a prerequisite for AZ104. So I'm going to spend 3 hours time on only prerequisite. So I'm going to cover all the basics there. For now, I am actually trying to give you an overview of my training, overview of this training, and then the content that we are going to cover, and what are all we are going to discuss is what I'm actually going to show you. And why you should learn Azure first of all. So why you should learn Azure, and why you can start, why you only can start AZ104. All these things we are going to discuss. So cloud administrator role will be he will actually create and manage services related to compute, networking, storage. So these are the main three building blocks for Azure. Compute is something, CPU, memory of any server. Like if you're in your laptop, you have a CPU and memory, right? So you'll have some i5 processor, you'll call i5 or i7 processor, and memory you might have some 8 gigs or 16 gigs. So that too, CPU, memory, we call it as compute. Yeah, someone want to ask any question? Okay, so that CPU, memory, you call it as compute. Then networking is something, you'll have your NIC, network interface card. So network interface card, without NIC you cannot get internet, any network connectivity, right? So that network, and then storage, your hard disks, or hard disks, or SSD or HDD disks. So these are the things. So primarily, these are the building blocks for cloud computing in IaaS services for Azure administrator, I can say. And you create these services and you manage these services. So entire the life cycle of those services. And so how do they do? How do they create? So to create any service or any virtual machine or anything in Azure, so a cloud administrator will actually reach out to their customer, whoever actually request us to create these services. So you will actually reach out to him. You will actually gather all the information. Let's say if you want, if let's say is your client want to your client want you to create one virtual machine, then the questions that you can ask is okay, and what is the VM size that you want to create, how many vCPUs that you need, how many CPUs you need, how much RAM you need, and what disk you want us to use, and what is the naming convention that you want us to put. And so these are all the questions that you basically ask to your client, and gather all the requirement, ask right question, get the information. Then once you have the information, you'll go ahead and start building that service. And once the service is ready, you'll hand it over to your customer. So this is what a cloud administrator will do. So it's something it's actually a cool job, because you get a requirement. Only you when you get a requirement, you actually build services and then you hand over to them. And when you get a issue, until you get a issue, you will not most probably work on that. So that's the reason a lot of people show interest, because it's like you will not have much stress, one thing. And if you still want to learn further and move further and grow further, you still have opportunities to move to any other architect or a DevOps, or all these options are out there available for you. And so cloud administrator will actually what cloud administrator will use Azure portal. So basically there is a portal called portal.azure.com, Azure portal. So there you manage, create, so all creation and managing things can be done from portal. But as and when you gain some experience, on exposure on Azure, then you can slowly start using PowerShell or CLI command. PowerShell is a Windows built-in tool where you can install, on top of it you can install one Azure module and you can start using it. And the command line interface is something it's basically for Linux users. So these two are being provided by Microsoft to manage Azure, because the reason being there may be users who are very much comfortable with Windows, so those users will prefer to use PowerShell. There may be users who are like developers or more much comfortable with the Linux operating systems. Those users can use CLI. So it is based on a bash, and you'll have, yeah, it is based on a bash. And then successful cloud administrator will start a role with the experience on operating systems, virtualization, cloud infrastructure, storage structures, and networking. If you want to be successful in cloud, in this cloud administrator role, if you need to have some knowledge on these operating systems and virtualization, cloud infrastructure, storage structures, networking. So that will actually take you to next level. So that will help you in being successful as a cloud administrator. So those basics are something what we are going to do, because considering there might be a few people who actually not aware of any of these things. They might be completely new to IT. So considering those people, what I am doing is I am actually delivering one full day. We are dedicating only for these basics, so that probably some of you might already aware of these basics. But I would suggest you to, I would request you to just be patient for one day, so that it will be kind of a recap for you as well. And so that others can also be on the same page. They will learn these basics, then they can, when we start actual Azure administrator course, it will be easy for them to grasp. And coming to prerequisites, so the prerequisites that I talked earlier, so for you to be successful, so these prerequisites, I mean, to actually for this Azure administrator to be completely learn, and then uh, get a certification and then do a job successfully. So these prerequisites is something you can learn. So these are what we are going to actually focus tomorrow. um, so you should have some understanding about virtualization technologies like VMs, virtual networking, virtual hard disk. And also you should have some understanding around network configuration, TCP/IP, DNS, and private VPNs, firewalls, encryption technologies. And also should have some understanding on Active Directory users, groups, role-based access control. What is role-based access control? These are all the things that you should have some knowledge onto. So don't worry, these terms maybe look like jargons for you, but don't worry. We are going to explain each and everything in upcoming days. And and also you should have some understanding of resiliency and disaster recovery and backup restore operations procedure. So these are the prerequisites that you must have. So those prerequisites we are going to build tomorrow anyways. And firstly, so what is cloud computing now coming to? So cloud, any idea that you guys already have? Any of you are working on Azure already, or trying to move Azure? Any experience on Azure? Do you know what is cloud computing? Quick answer. Anyone want to answer? Okay. So cloud computing is delivery of compute services over an internet. So when I say compute services, it can be, it will be like CPU and memory. So those are the important things: CPU, memory, delivery of these services over an internet. And so these delivery does not just stop with compute. These will be delivered in a multiple ways. You'll have networking, storage, analytics, and there are a lot of services in Azure. So those services will be delivered to you over an internet, on a rental basis. On a per hour, you will be charged on per hour basis. This enables every organization to for a faster innovation and flexible resources and economies of scale. The reason being, yeah, I'm going to cover the advantages of cloud computing in next slide. In cloud computing, again, I'm trying to reiterate. So cloud computing is delivery of compute services over an internet. So it's like in a simple answer, it's like a Zoom car. So if you want to use a Zoom car, you go ahead and you take it for rent and you pay on hourly basis, right? So just like that, uh, cloud is also providing these cloud providers: Amazon, Azure, Microsoft, Google, IBM, Oracle, Alibaba. So these are all cloud providers. They are providing these services on a rental basis to the customers. The customers are actually using them and paying on a per monthly basis rent to uh, these cloud providers. Top benefits of cloud computing. So first thing is cost. I'll tell you why cost. Then we have a global scale. So cost is something, the benefit that you get in a costing is because back in 10 years old, if you consider 10 to 15 years old, if you want to build one server, so first of all, why do we need a server? The reason being, let's say you're planning to open a startup. You have some idea, you plan to build, start a startup. And when you plan to start a startup, of course, for your startup company, you will definitely need a website, right? So that website you have to build. How do you build a website? You purchase a domain and you will host the domain on some like hosting services. Either you actually pay to someone else to host it, or else you can host it yourself. If you have some expertise with you, like some IT engineers with you within your organization, so you will actually host within your organization itself instead of paying money to someone else. Either of these you will follow. So I'm talking about back in 15 years old. Okay. So if you have to build that website yourself, firstly what you need one server. Server is actually a big machine. It's like so laptop is a client machine, server is a big machine which has a more compute power, multiple use, it can serve multiple users in a simple terms. So you purchase a server. To purchase a server, you might have to spend somewhere 50,000, not 50,000, more than that. In fact, 1 lakh to 2 lakh rupees that you have to spend on the server. And when you want to purchase a server, you actually have to think about how much CPUs you need, and how much RAM you need. So these are what is this your application requirement. Let's say your website requirement is somewhere around 4 GB, 4 GB of RAM and 2 vCPUs. But your server, you will never actually purchase a 4 gigs of RAM and 2 vCPUs. You will always purchase at least 2 times to 3 times higher, at least 12 gigs of RAM or 16 gigs of RAM with the 8 vCPUs, something like that. The reason being, you will always think about the future. So after 2 years, if my website actually request for high demand, like if a lot of users are connecting to my website, then again you might have to, if you purchase a smaller one now, you might have to sell this again, you might have to purchase a bigger one again. It's like a car. You purchase a car, and car with a 4-seater, and then later you realize that your family requires a 5-seater or 6-seater. Then in that case, what do you do? So I mean, in that case, what do you do? So you might again want to think about a bigger car, right? So in that case, you have to sell your car and again purchase another car. So nobody will try to do that. So before they purchase a car itself, they'll think, okay, so how many users, how many, I mean, how many of us are actually going to travel usually very often. So you will think about that, and if you think you need a bigger one, you'll go for a bigger one directly instead of going for a smaller one again, changing it to bigger one. So that's what organizations also do. So they will actually try to purchase little extra, little bigger one, bigger server. So to purchase that, they might spend some 1 lakh to 2 lakh rupees. So once they spend 1 to 2 lakhs rupees, they have to actually install operating system. To install operating system, they'll have to purchase a OS license. So that might cost you somewhere around, let's say, some 10,000, 20,000 server operating system, because we are going to purchase. So some 10 20,000. Then they'll purchase it, they'll install that. On top of that, they'll have to enable IAS role, and they'll have to create a website. So this is what they have to do. Let's say all this process, complete this process. So you have to get approvals, you have to purchase, procure your hardware, then install operating system, then actually and then you have to configure it. So this might take at least a week time to actually configure everything, to ensure, to make sure your website is up and running. So it might take at least a week time. And you have already spent somewhere around 2.5 lakhs. I've only taken nominal prices, but that, let's consider that as 2.5 lakhs rupees you're already spending on a day one, before day one itself of your startup. Okay. And uh, and uh, to host this server, you need some real estate, some place. So probably if you already have an office, within your office, you'll actually host somewhere. If you're all of you have attended colleges, right? BTech colleges. In BTech college, you will if you notice, there will be one room with full of AC, completely with full of ACs, and lot of cables available. So if you actually recall that. So your server actually would need some completely air condition for cooling mechanism. So it needs some cooling mechanism. So how you do a cooling is completely up to us. You can either directly go with air conditioners, or you can do a water cooling. So there are a lot of different technologies available out there. So if you're only using 1 2 servers, you might go with a air conditioner cooling completely with a AC. And then you need some maintenance also for that, power supply and real estate, that it will occupy some capacity. So all these things put together, you might at least spend some 3 lakhs, let's say, assuming. So this 3 lakh rupees you are spending, I mean, in the start of your startup itself. So that will put you some pressure, and you have to actually, your target will be to get the 3 lakh rupees first. So that will put you on some pressure on you. And let's say if your idea works out well, it is well and good, you will continue to do. If your idea doesn't work, a lot of startups in earlier, in 15 years before, if they want to open a startup, if they want to start a startup, they'll be in I mean, it is a complex process. They have to go through a lot of things, and invest a lot of money initially itself. If the idea works out well and good, if idea doesn't work, they'll go to bankrupt. So this is what happens. Because I only talked about 1 server, but there might be startups which request 10 servers initially itself. They might spend some 20 to 30 lakhs initially as an investment. So if the idea doesn't work, they'll go to bankrupt. So that now with Azure, what happens is, you don't have to spend all this. You don't have to purchase hardware. You don't have to rent any real estate for space. You don't have to worry about cooling or anything as such. In Azure, you get a same virtual machine. Let's say if you want to build some 16 gigs of RAM and 4 vCPUs of 4 or 8 vCPUs of memory, so that you will get it for close to 10 15 rupees per hour. It is 10 15 rupees per hour for 24 hours. Let's say if you assume somewhere around, you'll end up paying 500 to 1000 rupees. Consider 1000 rupees as a maximum. So for 30 days, you'll pay 30,000 rupees. And yearly basis, if you see, you'll end up only paying somewhere around 4 to 5 lakh rupees, probably 4 lakh rupees. And if your startup idea works out well, so you can continue doing it. If that doesn't work, you can stop it then and there, because you're not paying any upfront cost here. You're only paying hourly charges that you get on a month end bill. So it is completely in control. You can focus on your deliverables. So that's a advantage. That is the reason cloud computing is actually booming. And you still, there is still a lot of opportunities in cloud. I'll show you those things. In global scale is something because these are all these cloud providers are very big companies. In fact, like top 50 companies, all are very big companies. And those companies only, they have built data centers across the globe, multiple data centers they have built. So that will actually, you can leverage those data centers. You can sit in Hyderabad and you can create a virtual machine in US, in UK, so wherever you want. So you can actually, sitting in here, you can operate your your startup or your organization in another country. So that's the biggest advantage that you get. And performance. So when you create a server close to your users, of course you get a better performance. And security. So since these are all big companies, they'll invest a lot of money only for security. So because they'll prefer, they'll give highest priority for security, because security is something will place a higher, that place that will actually influence in a customer trust, I would say. In fact, Microsoft is number one in security. That speaks, because of the government organization contracts that Microsoft gets. And speed. So the amount of time it takes for you to create any service. We have talked about on-premises. To build a website, it will take at least a week time. In Azure, it within hour you can actually, not an hour, within few minutes you can create a VM, and then to configure a website, probably it might take another couple of minutes. So with less than an hour, you can create your application. You can create your website and keep it ready. So that's the speed that you'll get. It's completely agile. And then productivity. So you don't have to worry about the backend hardware. So if you purchase a hardware yourself, if it fails, if let's say some hard disk failure happens, you have to get it repaired. But in Azure, you don't have to do all that. Microsoft will take care of that. So not in Azure, in any cloud provider, you do not actually worry about the backend hardware, what happens, and it's a failure. So Microsoft or cloud providers will take care of this replacement and everything. Then reliability. So they also provide the backup disaster recovery solutions where, and highly reliable. Even if because of any reason your application is down, you will be able to immediately bring back your application up. And even in case of natural disasters also, you have a disaster recovery solution available where you can bring your application online even in case of natural disaster if you enable disaster recovery. So now let's talk about cloud. What type of clouds that we have: public cloud, private cloud, and the hybrid cloud. There are three types of cloud. Public cloud is nothing but it's where the name like says that any public, anyone in the globe can use this cloud as long as they're ready to pay the amount that Microsoft requests for. So Microsoft charges. So anyone can use this cloud. Examples: Azure, AWS, Google. All these are public clouds. Private cloud. So private cloud is something specific to yourself. It's something the building owned by you. Within your building, I talked about the on-premises example, right? To build a website, you purchase a hardware, you place it in somewhere in your location. So that is private to you. No one can access that. That is called private cloud. Example for private cloud is all your on-premises data centers. And then VMware vSphere is something very famous in private cloud virtualization. So that is wherever you use that in on-premises. So that is also considered as a private cloud. Hyper-V also another virtualization technology from Microsoft that also will be used in on-premises. Private cloud is something private to you. So you create your services, you manage them, you destroy them. No one else can actually access your services. Hybrid cloud is something combination of both private and hybrid, private and public cloud. So private cloud, you own your building, you host some servers, you create some 1 2 3 servers, and then if you need additional servers, if you can't purchase them specifically, if you can't invest money for that, then you will think about creating the VMs in Azure. This is what happening right now. A lot of customers, they've already purchased some hardwares, right? So they are using them as is until they completely goes bad, until they deterioration. They are still using them. And for any additional requirement, for any additional application or server required, they are actually using public cloud. So that's the approach a lot of organization doing. But here in this case, you should have some mechanism to actually enable communication from your on-premises to your private cloud to public cloud. This you can achieve with express route, site-to-site connectivity, point-to-site connectivity. These we will cover in detail later, so do not worry about them. A combination of both public and private cloud is called hybrid cloud. Then so this is what we have seen. Public cloud, no capital expenditure. You don't have to spend anything. You only pay on an hourly basis rent, and applications can be created very quickly. Organization pay only for what they use. In private cloud, hardware must be purchased for startup and maintenance. Organization have control over the resources and security. Yes, so you own complete control because it's owned by your it's within your building. So your responsibility to actually ensure security and everything. So you will have that control. That is right. And the organizations are responsible for hardware maintenance and updates here in this case. In hybrid cloud, it provides more flexibility. Organizations can choose which application they want to run in their premises, and which application they want to run in a cloud. So a lot of organizations, what they do is they will actually store sensitive and important data in their on premises, and rest everything they will actually keep in cloud. So that's what they approach, because there will be some politics also within organization or within the country itself. So where data should not be hosted. Right now we are also seeing an example, right? An example of Mastercard. So where Mastercard has been where our government has requested Mastercard to actually store their data, our user data, Indians user data within India itself, because of security reasons. But now Mastercard is denying to do that. They hosted this data in a Switzerland or in US somewhere. So they want Indian government is requesting them to store the data within India. So by storing this data within India, so the Mastercard is actually will have to again purchase anything like a data center, a real estate, then host all this data, store this data here. They might give few opportunities to Indians here. So these are all things will happen. So that will give some revenue to India also. Instead of that, if they want to go with some public cloud solution, so they will pick AWS or Amazon or Google Cloud. So these companies have regions. These cloud providers have regions here. They will choose a region and they will create a service, and they will migrate the data here. This approach they have to follow. But yeah, so this is how it look like. Geographical political situation also will influence sometimes to store some data, some at a certain places, because China will never allow will never allow their data to be hosted in other countries. It always in Azure or AWS or any cloud provider, you cannot access China's portal itself, China's region itself. It's completely independent. So they all the data will be stored within their region. You cannot access that. So those kind of these cloud providers will also compliant according to those geographical political situations also. And capex and opex is nothing but capital expenditure and operational expenditure. So capital expenditure is something like you spend upfront. In a private cloud, you purchase hardware, you spend upfront, then you use it. Then initially you'll do investment, then you'll start using it. Operational expenditure is something while you're using your product, like a maintenance. You purchase a car initially. We have talked about Zoom car example, right? If you want to own your own car, private car for yourself, you actually what you do, you purchase a car, you do some investment for that, right? Then you purchase a car, you get a car, and then you'll start using it. While using it, you'll actually give it for servicing and all that stuff, right? So that is kind of operational expenditure. uh, Capital expenditure is something investment. In the other case, in a cloud way in cloud computing, where you purchase them, just like a Zoom car, you only whenever, let's say on a weekend, you might want to go out for 2 hours, 3 hours. So what you do is simply take a Zoom car and pay only for 2-3 hours, and hand it over to them. So that's what cloud provider does for you. So if you want a service, you take it, use for 2-3 hours, then you can give it back when you don't need. But in on premises, in car, if you purchase it, you do investment, so of course you have to use it. So this kind of but here this cloud provider is becoming much economical compared to the investment. So that's the reason a lot of companies because hourly basis charge is what these cloud providers do is they'll invest a lot of money. They will actually sell it for a cheaper price. They'll give it for a cheaper price. Let's say if you're doing a big business in a market, if you only have 10 cases of Apple, you might actually think about the pricing. And if you're only expecting some 100 customers, you might actually give a strict pricing and you'll take some amount for you. But if you're doing it largely, if you're actually having some thousand cases of Apple, if you're doing it largely, then what you do, you'll actually reduce some pricing a little bit to attract your customers and you'll give it to them. That's what you do, right? That's what Geo has already has done. So these cloud providers actually, they will invest money, uh, because they are big companies, they have money, they'll invest money, and they will give these services, they will distribute these services across multiple customers. In fact, out of Fortune 500 companies, 95% companies are already into Azure. So they will distribute, they will actually give this service as a rental basis at a comparatively lesser price. So that's the reason a lot of customers are actually into cloud. In fact, this business is going since 2016, 2006. Now we are in 2021. We have not even, still only 60% of environment infrastructure is into cloud. Still, there is 40% left. So that is the reason by 2023, they are expecting this business to grow up to $500 billion. And infrastructure service, cloud provides three types of services. Infrastructure service, something like nothing but a virtual machine or any VM that you also hold some control. And like compute, networking, storage will be managed by Microsoft. And rest, virtual machine, operating system, application installation, these will be managed by customer. IaaS service is something, example is a virtual machine is example for IaaS services. Virtual machine, storage, networking, these are kind of IaaS services. Then there is another service called PaaS service. So PaaS service is something where you will not have much control. You will only have control on applications and data. So that is kind of a example. Best example is the web application. So if you want to build a website, you will only worry about the application and data. So you'll directly get a PaaS solution in Azure or anywhere else. So in other cloud providers also, you will get the PaaS solution, and you can start focusing on application and data instead of worrying about the backend hardware, where it is hosted, how it is hosted. All these things you do not have to worry. SaaS is something direct solution. So cloud providers, they will directly design this solution. They will directly sell it for you. Example is Office 365 is a SaaS only. Your Gmail, whatever you're using, Gmail, all these applications that are being used, they are already hosted in cloud. In our day-to-day life, we are already using cloud, but we are now we are focusing in our career. But in day-to-day life, all your mobiles are already backed up to cloud, right? So every mobile provider, if you take MI phone, they have MI cloud. If you take Apple phone, they have Apple cloud. Any mobile has their own cloud to host this data. So they'll take a backup and they'll store in a cloud. We are already using cloud, but we are learning that cloud now because in our day-to-day life, we already have a cloud. The SaaS application is not something that the application will be directly completely built by these providers. They will sell it to customers. O365 is the best example. Here you'll only have a control on data and access. You'll not you can just choose which user can store how much data and all that stuff, but you'll not have control on any other things. So we are going to see that metrics as well. I'll show you how exactly it look like. IaaS is more flexible one because you'll hold some control. PaaS is something directly will allow you to focus on application development. That's why application developers will use this PaaS. SaaS is something pay-as-you-go pricing model. You just use the product and you'll pay for that. So this is how the shared responsibility will look like. On premises, you do everything: storage, networking, compute, virtual machine, operating system. Everything will be managed by you. You can see whatever you manage, you see them in green. So all will be managed by you. It's completely our responsibility. In IaaS, this is cloud. In IaaS, uh, Microsoft will manage compute, networking, storage, rest, virtual machine, operating system, runtime, applications, and these should be managed by us. And in PaaS, again, until runtime will be managed by Microsoft, and applications and data will be managed by customers, us, whoever is using. And SaaS only data and access will be managed by, rest everything will be managed by cloud providers. So as you can see, so now the trend is that IaaS is something, IaaS is something is giving a lot of revenue. Along with that IaaS, this PaaS in PaaS, Kubernetes containers, these are also giving some revenue. Slowly the revenue is growing. So the good thing is that in this training we have Kubernetes also included, containers, Kubernetes app service also included. So that will give you some idea overview about that. So coming to regions, how many regions Microsoft has? First of all, what is region? Region is nothing but a data center, a physical building that you have seen. It's a big physical building that consists of, all the servers. So uh, it's like a data center tour. If you just Google and YouTube, so you can just Google Microsoft data center. You can in YouTube you can search for Microsoft data center tour. So it will give you some 20 minutes video will show you how inside a data center, how exactly a data center will look like. A data center will consist of separate racks. Racks are like a big wall, like racks. Those racks will actually have these servers inserted into each of these racks. And these servers are and this data center will consist of lot of servers, and these servers will have a separate cooling mechanism based on whichever cooling that they want to, and they'll have separate substation for separate electricity power supply. Now Microsoft is actually encouraging resource friendly, eco friendly system, so they're actually going with the solar and wind in some locations. So they're still in the process of it. So this data center completely there'll be security guards and 24/7 surveillance and everything. So they'll take care of because they host customer data, so they'll give that the highest priority. Like this, close to 60 plus data centers Microsoft has. So 60 plus data centers across the globe, and these data centers are actually representing. I called it data centers, but each location they call it as a region. So close to 60 plus regions they have across the globe. In some regions they have three data centers. If you see this West US, and these are all regions. Each of these regions has three separate data centers, three separate buildings within the same city because of the demand that they've got. Uh, these regions are actually spreading across 140 countries. So 140 countries across the globe, and still based on my knowledge, still there are 10 or 14 plus regions are coming up. More regions are coming in Asia Pacific itself, and 10 plus regions are expected. So 70 plus regions you will see soon. So that's a huge number. If you compare this number of regions with the other cloud providers, AWS or GCP, they are actually not even half of it. So I'll show you. Next slide is actually talking about that. So AWS has close to 24 regions, only 24 regions across the globe. And you know how many GCP has? GCP has just 11 regions across the globe. So there, the way Microsoft, the pace Microsoft is actually going right now, they know the future of cloud. Future is the cloud. That is the reason they're actually innovatively, they are actually rapidly growing. In the last 3 years, if you see that the changes that Microsoft, the innovations or whatever the technologies that they have bought, and the way the Azure is growing, the revenue that they have got this year, 2021, they got revenue of $60 billion, and the major revenue is from Azure itself. So Azure has a lot of opportunity. This proves that they already have 60 plus regions, but they are still in a plan of building some 10 to 12 plus regions. So that speaks, right? So, and other side, actually I'll talk about a couple of other numbers also. So AWS has 24, GCP has 11. These are the top three cloud providers as of now. Still, I would say the major market share is holding by AWS itself. But if you see last 3 years, the way Azure is growing, so Azure might overtake soon. So in Azure, you'll have a region pairs. For every region, there will be other region pair. So when I say pair, this paired region is because this is for disaster recovery purpose. So these regions will be separated 300 miles away from each other, and there will be automatic replication from some services, and the prioritized paired region in the event of outage, natural disaster. updates will be rolled out sequentially. If they want to perform any updates, first they will perform on this. Once it is completed, then only they will touch this. Until this complete, they will not touch this paired region. And the reason for pairing every region in Azure is this is for natural disaster. Let's say there is some flood that happen in East US. So you will have West US region, which is close to 300 miles away from this East US. And so most likely, I mean, in India, we have in India South, India Central. India South is Chennai. India Central is actually Pune. So these two are actually close to 400, 500 kilometers away from each other. If any flood, any natural disaster happens in Chennai, that most likely may not happen in Pune, right? So if you enable disaster recovery for your environment, so you will all your environment will be replicated from India South to from Chennai to Pune. Whenever your Chennai data center completely flood happens, then your Pune services in from Pune will be immediately bought online. Your application will continue to run. So this is the advantage you get. And by default in Azure, by default there are some services that they are global services. Those services will automatically replicate across these paid regions. And in case of any incident that happens, any outage that you see in Chennai, immediately their focus will be to bring this online immediately. Their focus, they'll give first priority to this region. And there are some availability options in Azure. So availability options. We have if you have a single virtual machine in Azure, the premium storage, you'll have availability of 99.95%. So first of all, what is SLA? SLA is something like a service level agreement. When I as a customer, when I am planning to build one virtual machine in Microsoft, or then my first question to Microsoft is that, okay, I am purchasing a VM in your data center, but what is the guarantee that you're going to give for me, and that my virtual machine is always available? What is the guarantee it will not go down anytime because of any hardware failure in the backend? Then the answer from Microsoft will be, okay, if you are using a single VM from single VM with a premium storage, the SLA that you can get is 99.95%. We can provide you, which means on a monthly basis, per month maximum outage, you're seeing numbers here, 99.95%. Per month maximum outage, you can only see 43 minutes. You cannot, you will not see more than 43 minutes is what Microsoft is guaranteeing you. Let's say if it crosses this 43 minutes, then Microsoft will actually pay you back. They'll give you a discount on the amount that you pay. They will actually pay back you some amount. So that's the approach that Microsoft follows. So let's say you might again say, okay, 43 minutes is too much for me. I really don't want 43 minutes my application to go down for 43 minutes. You will see, right, a lot of times any banks, they'll send a notification to you like, we are actually doing some maintenance so and so hours, like 1 hour, 2 hours. So those kind of downtimes we are talking about. If you say that I really don't want to actually see my application is very critical, I don't want, if this application is down for 43 minutes, 43 minutes cannot be at may not be at the same time, like all together at one single instance. 43 minutes downtime may not happen. Maybe it may be like a pieces of it, 5 minutes one time, 2 minutes another time, something like that. It can happen like that also. So we cannot say that. So if you want to reduce the downtime further, then Microsoft will give you an option where you can choose availability zones, which is nothing but in a single data center, they'll hold here you are seeing availability region, availability zones. So you are seeing availability zones in some places. So these available in each of these availability zones, you have three data centers, more than one data center, three data centers minimum they will have in each of these. So if you see these availability zones, not all countries have these availability zones. Whichever country has higher requirement, whichever country has more requirement, more demand of their services, they have built this multiple data centers there. And in India also, they are soon coming up with, in central India, they're planning to actually build a availability zone that is actually already announced, and it will be publicly available soon. So this is all available in availability zones. You will have three separate data centers. So in that case, Microsoft will say you can have two virtual machines instead of one for high availability, and you can place them in availability zones by placing one in one data center, other one is another data center. If you do so, then you will get high availability. Your SLA will be improved further to 99.99%, which means you can only have 4 minutes of downtime, 4 minutes of downtime per month, which is very less. And this 4 minutes of because you'll have two VMs. Even if one VM goes down, you'll have other VM. So in this case, you for both of these VMs, it is your responsibility to ensure some load balancing mechanism. That is something we'll discuss in detail later. If I talk about it, it will be too much now. So multiple and also you have a multiple region disaster recovery also. We have discussed about paid regions, what paid regions will do. So paid regions will actually help you in replicating your environment from one region to other region. All organizations will actually do this DR drill. They call it as disaster recovery drill. So they will actually replicate their entire environment from primary to secondary. Then they'll on a yearly basis, they'll take one time as a downtime. They'll perform this drill. They'll fail over to a secondary, and they'll see how effectively your secondary region hardware it's working fine. So they'll ensure that, because that is really important. SLAs that we have discussed, this is how SLA metric will look like. If you're any organization say 99%, it's like 7 hours per month. 99.95%, 3 hours per month. 99.9%, 43 minutes. So this is for VM, and 99.95, 21 minutes. This is for VMs in availability set. Availability set and zone I'll talk later in detail. 99.99 is something you'll get with availability zones. So this is highest. And management tools that are available in Azure to use. So Azure portal is a primary thing that we use. Whoever actually starting first time, so they'll most likely use Azure portal. In fact, most of my training will be into Azure portal itself. But wherever required, I will use PowerShell and CLI also. I'll give complete basics, full basics about PowerShell and CLI. Both I'll give you how you can learn even if you're not aware. And then these tools will and then Azure mobile app is something this doesn't have a lot of features. It only will allow you to run some scripts and then to power on VM, power off VM. So only few options are available in mobile app. REST API is something for application development. If you want to integrate with any software development kits that you can do. This is not this we are not going to cover as part of Azure administrator training. Only in this we are only going to cover ARM templates, Azure Resource Manager templates, infrastructure as a code, that we are going to cover. And then Cloud Shell is a cloud-based, browser-based shell. This provides both PowerShell and CLI built-in. So this also I'm going to cover. In fact, most of the times we are going to use this Cloud Shell. This is being provided by Microsoft for free of cost to use it. So we can leverage this and start using it, because this has a completely pre-installed softwares. So whereas if you have to use PowerShell and CLI, you have to install a software on your machine and start using it. So here it's browser based. So, and all these inputs, whatever you give, those inputs will be taken to given to Azure Resource Manager. This is the API for Azure. This takes the input, whichever way that you give, and then it will convert that input into a JSON format, that is JavaScript object notation format. And that data will be, that JSON format data will be given to the backend hardware. And in a backend, everything works in a JSON. In a front end, you don't see JSON much. You see only that in a ARM templates. But in backend, everything happens in a JavaScript object notation itself, and that will be sent to the hardware. Then hardware will create the virtual machine or a service that you request, and will hand over to you in whichever way that you create. If you create from portal, it will give you a confirmation here. If you create from PowerShell, it will give you a confirmation here. So that is how it works. In a backend, you see JSON, so do not worry. But on a front end, you will see in the ARM templates, we will use that JSON. I'm going to explain about that as well. And Azure actually follows this defense in depth strategy for security reasons. So they will actually at every perimeter, they'll actually have the security on a data. So data that is sitting in a data center will be encrypted by default. In Azure, every complete data will be encrypted, and applications at every stage you'll have security in place. You have NSGs, network security groups. Those will actually filter the traffic. You have Azure firewall separate service that will actually filter traffic again. perimeter layer protection. You have Azure DDoS, distribution of denial attack. That is one type of attack attackers will use. So that we are going to see that in detail. Now, if I talk about that, it will be too much. And then on network layer, you'll have, yeah, at every stage, starting from physical security for your data center, having a separate physical security guard, until your data completely that is being encrypted. So at every stage, you will have this security in place. And security is not only a responsibility of cloud provider, but also a responsibility of customer, because if you see the metrics, and on premises, everything will be managed by customer. So my customer is responsible for security. But in cloud, IaaS, until Microsoft, whatever you see the Microsoft responsibility in yellow, everything will be taken care by Microsoft. But whatever you see in a customer, it's customer responsible to take care of the security reasons, like, not using a complex password, not sharing password to anyone. So all sort of those things plays really an important role. And so what is authentication and authorization? So authentication is something like, yeah, so if you see a authentication, comparison of authentication and authentication is nothing but, you're identifying the person, but seeking as, you're actually proving your identity. So a very simple example is, if you're entering a tech park, you're working for a company, that company is actually there in a tech park. There are a lot of, let's say 10 buildings are there. So to enter into a tech park, the security guard will ask you, he doesn't know anything, he'll ask you your identity card. You'll show identity card, he will verify the photo and name. He'll verify the photo of yours, and he'll look at you and he'll verify, okay, this is yours. Then he'll send you. It's like you're identifying yourself. That's authentication. Then the authorization is like, you enter now, you're authenticated, you have entered the tech park. Now, you just because you enter the tech park, you cannot go to any building that you want, because those building belongs to different organizations. You can only go to the building that you are authorized to go. Like, you're working for a company, only for that company building you can enter into. Again, you will again do swiping or anything as such, maybe fingerprint or something like that. So only you're authorized to whichever building that you're authorized to do, you'll go. So authentication is something identifying yourself. This works like credentials also. So when you log into any portal, providing your credentials and logging into it is called authentication. But once you log into it, what permissions you have, what you can do, what you cannot do, that will be decided by authorization. Whatever you're authorized to do, you will do it. Whatever you're not authorized to do, you cannot do it. So that's a comparison from authentication and authorization. I just have few more slides. I'll complete that, and then I'll take up questions. And coming to multi-factor authentication, so this cloud completely uses the multi-factor authentication. That's another advantage that you get in on-premises. In the olden days, you don't have all these features. Multi-factor authentication will give you additional security, where you'll actually authenticate in a multiple ways. Like, it works basically something like this: something, that is a username, password, something you possess. It can be, it can be something like, your authenticator app, where you approve it. Maybe a mobile that you have, you will get a OTP, something you possess. Then something you are is like, maybe a fingerprint or a face unlock. These are something you are. So these are things that actually, this is all, these in the multiple areas it will be authenticated. So you can enable all these for multi-factor authentication. Most of the organizations are already using that. Then conditional access, another important role. So what conditional access in Azure does is, so based on certain conditions, let's say a user is all of a sudden is actually trying to log in from Pakistan. Immediately, it might block the access, or it might, let's say I'm sitting in here in India, and I logged into one of my device, and all of a sudden within few minutes I tried to log in from Israel, let's say. So if you do so, then it is it is not at all possible for me to travel from here to Israel, right? So that is one logic. So those kind of conditions, based on those conditions, it will actually uh, either allow the access or require, it will actually enforce multi-factor authentication, it will ask you to authenticate in a different way. Then it might block access also sometimes. It depends. So requiring multi-factor authentication is something we very commonly we notice in O365 Gmail also. If you go to an internet center, try to log into a Gmail, it will actually ask multi-factor authentication. So this is something is already available in place, in a lot of organizations. Everywhere we are already using this. So on certain conditions, it will either allow or require enforce MFA or block the access. So this is how conditional access works. Okay, so now we have learned a lot of things. And let's say you want to move some services or from on-premises to Azure. Then you're wondering how much they're going to charge me. How do you check that? So there is a price calculator in Azure which explains the pricing. You select the region, you select operating system, you select the size, how many vCPUs, how much RAM that you need. Based on the selection that you make, it will give you a pricing something like this. If you use the same service for 730 hours, which is 1 month duration, you will end up paying some money. So this is how it is going to give you some estimate also. So that will give you some idea. Okay, if I migrate to a cloud, okay, this is what I'm going to, I'll have to pay. And there are multiple different ways that you can actually reduce your costing also. There are some ways I'll talk about those different ways to actually reduce the pricing, reduce the costing. Like one example is DevTest Lab. If you plan to build development or test environment in Azure, there is separate subscriptions called DevTest Lab. In this subscription, they are going to give services at a cheaper cost. This is only recommended for development test environment, not for production environment. For production, they strongly suggest you to go with the production environment. And typically, so let's say you learned and what exactly a project will look like. Let's say you are actually into a company, into a company as Azure administrator. What you will have to do? So you'll be given something like this, an architecture. An architect can give us something like this, and he might ask you to build these services. So if you see there, these are multiple components that you're seeing in Azure. You'll start with the resource group that is a logical container. Then you can create a virtual machine. Then this virtual machine will have, for security reason, you'll have NSG, network security group, and then you'll have a public IP address, and you'll have some DNS also for this, and disks, managed disks, storage account, and physical host. So this is our typical this is very basic one with a single VM. This is how the architecture will look like, and you will be asked to create a virtual machine. In a visualization, if you see it, it looks like this. And if you want to see little more complex one, so multi-tier will look like this, where you'll have a multiple set of VMs with the entire application. You'll have a multiple tiers, web application tier, and then you'll have a business tier, and then SQL database tier. And you'll have this setup in two regions, primary and secondary. If primary goes down, secondary you'll have. So you have these two regions for high availability, and you have a traffic manager which does the load balancing. Then similar setup, whatever you have here, same thing you are trying to build here. So this is actually a multi-tier application, architecture. It's a comparatively a bigger one. This is how a project will actually look like. The previous one was a very simple, basic one. This is how a project can look like. So this is what an administrator, a cloud solution architect will build it, and the administrator, he might actually assign some tasks. Not all services will are related to IaaS. Whatever are related to IaaS will be given to you. He might ask you to build these VMs. He might ask you to build these services. So he might and any doubt that you have, you can always reach out to solution architect. So this is how it look like, guys. And there is another architect. So this is about web application with a relational database, SQL database. So this is how it look like, where you'll have a load balancer which is balancing across 3 VMs. Even if one VM goes down, you'll have other VMs serve the application. And again, you are having another internal load balancer across your database servers also. One is active passive database server. When the active one is down, you'll have a passive one which serves the load. So this is how application architecture will look like. An application, we have talked about one application earlier, right? So in on-premises, if you want to build a website, it will take at least some days. It will take 1 week time. Same thing if you want to achieve in Azure, this is how it look like. So these are the components that you will build within a few hours. You can build all of these, and you can configure them. You can start using your application. So I talked about DDoS protection. Azure DDoS. This is distributed denial of service. This actually, what an attacker does is, he will try to send, let's say usually all these VMs can only take, let's say 10, 20 requests at a time, RDP requests or a website request. Website, let's say your website is actually designed in such a way, it can take all at a time, it can take only some 100 website requests, web requests, not 100,000 web requests. So an attacker, what attacker does is, he will at a time, he'll try to send 10,000, 10,000, 20,000 of requests to your website. So in that case, your website will not be able to serve all the requests. It will go to unresponsive state, and your website will go down. So you will experience some downtime. So in that case, this DDoS protection will actually detect that if any requests are coming from a certain place, immediately within less time, if multiple requests are coming, it will immediately block those requests. It will immediately block the traffic. So that is how it actually safeguard your environment. So if you want to see what are all services that are available in Azure, so this is how it look like, complete Azure. It's only, these are only a small list of services, commonly used services, but not all of them. There are close to 300, 400 plus services available out in Azure, but we are not going to deal with all of them. We are only going to deal with these compute services. These are all the important ones for us. So these virtual machines, containers, blob, Azure files, premium storage, VNet, load balancer, DNS, express route, traffic manager. So these are all we are going to cover. And in this Active Directory also, we are going to cover security management. We also will cover multi-factor authentication, key vault. These are all we are going to cover. On hybrid side, backup we are going to cover, and log analytics monitoring solution we are going to cover. Import export also we'll discuss about it. Site to site recovery also we'll discuss. And then developer side, compute, we are going to discuss web apps. And then we are going to discuss about containers and database we are not covering. Integration containers, I don't see them here, but containers also AKS will discuss. So from a platform developer side, these are all developer related tools: compute, web, mobile, developer services, integration, and then analytics and IoT, data, media, and services. This is how a typical architecture look like. This regions, this is an old number, not the new number is 60 regions. Coming to the demand for the cloud skills, so demand for the Azure skills. So if you look at last, this graph is from 2010. That is when cloud actually, AWS was into the market since 2006 itself, but Azure has come into market since 2010. So the market actually, the cloud skills demand look like this since 2010. But if you see last 3 years of growth, so this orange one is a Microsoft Azure's cloud skill demand. So since last 3 years, if you see, it's completely like steep. It has seen a lot of growth in last 3 years. In fact, if you see year-on-year growth for Azure demand has grown 58% annually in last 3 years since 2017. And compared to cloud skills in general, all put together, all general cloud skills demand actually grown 29%. And AWS itself alone actually grown somewhere around 14%. But Azure has grown 58%. That's a huge difference. And for starters, like someone like you guys who want to learn it from, just now you want to move to Azure for starters. So in last 12 months, this is actually 2021, not a 2021 latest one. So in last year, if you see, even during pandemic time, so the cloud skills actually in general completely down by 30% in last 2 months. Cloud skills are down by 30%. And cloud skills demands for starters. And then demand for AWS is again down by 17%. But whereas demand for Azure is up by 15%. So that is another thing that speaks how the cloud skills are actually growing, how Azure is growing, how the opportunities are actually coming in. So if you just go to LinkedIn jobs, you just search with Azure admin, you will see a lot of Azure administrator jobs. That is for sure. And as I said earlier, out of Fortune 500 companies, top 95% of, which means close to 450 not 450, more than that. So 95% of companies are already into 475 companies are already into Azure out of Fortune 500 companies. And this is how this is the latest one, April 2021, the market revenue. So this is how it looked like. As of now, cloud revenue in the quarter one, they have got $41 billion. But if you see the market share right now, AWS is holding 32% of market share, which is higher in the cloud compared to any other providers. The reason being, AWS has started in 2006, before Azure actually started 2010, but initial model was failure. Then they have again restarted with a different module approach. That is in 2014. So close to 8 years later, Azure actually started the right competitive, cloud to AWS. In 80, although it has started after 8 years, the revenue it has gotten, the cloud market share it has already gained is 19%, and still it is continuing to grow. And rest all to Google Cloud actually has 7%. Rest all other clouds put together 42%. So still there are a lot of still opportunities out there. And this AWS, the reason why AWS has got higher and still why Microsoft is still in second, reason being, any customers whoever actually migrate their environment to a particular cloud, they will not. So any environment, any server, when they build, it's not easy to actually immediately modify it. If they migrate to AWS, it's not easy to immediately migrate from AWS to Azure, because they might have done a lot of homework to actually migrate to AWS, and immediately switching that to Azure, will require a lot of efforts again. But slowly, the general trend is that any organization who migrates to a particular cloud, they will at least use that cloud for 10 years time. So that's a general trend. Any organization will at least use a cloud for 10 years time. So within the 10 years duration, they might think whether they want to continue with the same cloud or they want to migrate with other cloud. So we are already seeing that the users who are using AWS cloud, they are also, while they are actually running their workload in AWS itself, they started creating new services in Azure. So that is how you're seeing some growth in Azure. So AWS, as I said, 10 years time, any customer will actually tend to use it. That is a minimum time that will take. So that will actually slowly, I'm expecting that slowly the revenue for this cloud share for AWS might reduce, and the cloud share for Azure might grow. The reason I'll tell you, AWS is something like AWS is into multiple products. When I say multiple products, they are into e-commerce. They are into multiple different products, right? Apart from e-commerce, also they have different products also. So any customer will not feel comfortable in my hosting their environment into their competitor, because their AWS is already like e-commerce provider. Any e-commerce customer will not prefer to use AWS to host their environment. So they'll pick alternative. So alternative, they'll find Google. Google also has multiple products. And in fact, Google never claimed that their Google Cloud is a primary business revenue, business revenue technology. Google always actually get a revenue from their YouTube ads itself. Apart from YouTube ads, Google still says that YouTube ads is a primary thing for them, primary solution, primary service for them to give a revenue. But Google never claimed that Azure is their first priority. But Microsoft has already claimed that Azure is our first priority. In fact, we are a platform company. The statement from Microsoft CEO is that Microsoft is a productivity and platform company. It doesn't deal with any other products where another competitor will not have to think anything like that. So Microsoft is into platform. So it includes all other organizations, and that is how, and it has gained a lot of trust, and security wise, security standards are much better, and that's the reason Azure is the best thing to learn. And Azure 104 is something easy to learn for initial starters. And if you see in last 2 years, world #1 CEO is Satya. So the reason, when you have a good leader, of course your the services or revenue or company will be in a very good shape, and the learning that tool also will give you good opportunities. That's what we are noticing also. And my certification model, if I have to study a certification, what I do first, I'll gain the content knowledge via trainings. Then I'll do some labs in a practical application. Then I take some testing skills like any practice tests or directly write a certification exams. I think, do you guys have any questions? Because I've been talking since long. I just only have 2 more slides, I believe, 2 or 3 slides. But before that, I just want to, ask if you guys have any questions. Okay, so let me cover this last 2 slides, then maybe I'll open for questions. So this is how the course is outlined. So we'll start with the virtual machines, which is a very important one. Then we'll talk about administrator, which includes tools like portal, PowerShell, CLI, ARM templates, then networking, storage, monitoring. Serverless computing will have app services, web apps, containers, and AKS, Kubernetes services. Then identities will have Azure Active Directory. Data protection will have backup and disaster recovery. Inter-site connectivity will talk about how do you connect your on-premises private cloud, public cloud together. Network traffic management will cover user-defined routes, and then load balancers, and then application gateway, traffic managers. And the governance and compliance will talk about policies, tags, role-based access control, logs. These are all we are going to discuss. This is how the course is outlined. And these are all have weightage as this, where you have computer networking have higher weightage, and others have some percentage. Higher the weightage, you can expect more number of questions in certification. The exam questions will look like this, where you will be given a certain question and will be also given a solution, and will be asked you, does this solution meet your requirement? You just have to choose yes or no. You might have some 6 to 8 questions like this. And another type of question where you will be given a scenario, you'll have to choose a particular single answer out of this. Multiple choice also is there. You will be given a scenario, you'll be asked to select multiple answers. Select drag and drop. So you'll be given a scenario, you'll be asked to you'll be asked to actually give us steps in order. So you'll have to drag and drop your answers here. Exam delivery you can take either at a local center like like Pearson VUE Center, or you can also take it at your home. When you're taking it at your home, you'll have to be alone in a room, and you should have enough lighting and good internet connectivity, and you'll be completely under surveillance during the exam time. So that's the end of this slide. Do you guys have any questions on whatever I've discussed now? Sorry, I took some extra time, probably some 20 minutes I took extra, I guess. So do you guys have any questions to me? So like any questions why you want to learn, whether you can learn it or not, those sort of any sort of questions that you have, you can ask me. I'll answer.
Yeah, I have some doubts.
Please.
Is there like coding covered in this training session, or like coding is not covered?
So this doesn't actually contains any coding. But of course this will have some imperative syntax related, like PowerShell and CLI. Then also declarative syntax related like ARM templates will be covered in this, but not like any coding like Java, Python will not be covered in this. Only
Okay.
you'll have
But you said you have some templates, right? Like, are they predefined, or like we need to define it?
Good question. So they are like not a predefined, you have to define. So that's what I called declarative. So you actually declare them. So, but there are a lot of templates already out there. So what we are going to do, we are going to use those templates, and then we are going to modify them according to our need and utilize them. So administrator will not actually create any template from scratch. He will actually most likely he will reuse the template that is already existing, because in Azure what happens is anything that you already built in Azure, so you will have a template format readily available within Azure itself. So if I open my Azure portal, so anything that you build, you will directly have the template format readily available there. So you can use the same thing and you can remodify it as per you don't have to build it from scratch. So I'll show you one sample one. Let's say I have one VM here. So you'll have an option called export template. Every service will have a template format readily available for you. So this is how the template format will look like.
Okay.
Yeah. Did I
And
answer your question? Yeah.
yeah, I got it cleared. The other thing is like you are opening this portal, right? Like you have a free access to this to practice, or like we need to pay for something for this?
Yeah, so that is again a good question. So actually there is an option called free trial option. So I'm going to show you that free trial option. So if you have a credit card, you can actually create one free trial. So free trial, they are going to give you close to 14,400 rupees for 28 days without actually charging you even a single rupee. So you'll not be charged anything, but all you have to do is just verify. If you have to use this free trial, you have to just verify with a credit card in India. In US, debit card also will work. That is just only for verification purpose, because to avoid anyone, if they just simply open for it, anyone can use it. So there may be a wastage. So that's the reason they are actually asking for a credit card. If you have a credit card, you can create a free trial. You'll get access for 28 days, while we also will take about 28 days to finish this course. You can actually practice along with me while I am showing a demo and everything. So let me show you how exactly. Yeah. So that free trial is something you can do. I strongly recommend you to create a free trial. However, there may be some cases where uh, people might not have a free credit card. So in that case, I would again still ask them to check with their friends. But still, if there is no alternative for them, then I'll try to find another way. I'll try to give access to my subscription, or I'll try to find a sandbox and kind of things for a lab purpose. But those will have some restrictions. So if you have a free trial, will not have much restrictions. You can full-fledgedly practice. But if yeah, of course, I can give access to my subscription to for practice purpose. But I'll set some expectations, because I'll only have some limited credits, because for training, if I give, so those can be wiped off. So that's the reason. If needed, I'll also give permission when needed.
If, for example, I wanted to extend my access more than 28 days, can I use it again, like with a different mail ID, or like I need?
Yes. You have to use it with a different credit card, different email address, and then from different IP range. So let's say you connected from your. This is how it look like, where you have to give details, and then you have to verify it by your credit card. Once you sign up, then you'll get these benefits. It says 33 and 13,300, but now you're getting 14,000 change. So to recreate another time, so you have to use a different IP range. Let's say you connected from your home network, like any broadband connection network. So you can try with your mobile hotspot. Sometimes it doesn't happen, so because of the same IP range, you can try from mobile hotspot, or you can try asking your colleagues to create for you and hand it over to you.
Okay.
Any other questions that you have, Rama?
Mhm. Actually, I'm a TSM administrator. So, like, uh, uh, will it help me to go with this Azure?
Uh, okay, TSN. Okay, it's a storage administrator, right?
Yeah, Tivoli Storage
Okay.
Man.
Yeah. So definitely it does help. So yeah, so you can actually, yeah, definitely it will help you, because I have 3 to 4 members who actually are storage administrators, who joined my course and learned, and they're into cloud now. So yes, because you will think that you'll see the future, right? For Tivoli, what's the future is something you have to think about. So
Yes.
if you want to if you think about future, definitely cloud is the best thing that you can learn, and also easy to learn. So you don't have coding and that stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Pavitra, do you have any questions? Yeah, I can't hear you in case if you are speaking. Probably my problem.
It's very really interesting topic.
Okay,
Thank you
okay.
for your demo. Actually, I with the job around 3 years ago, and I want to start it again. Is this helpful to start with Azure administration?
Yeah, that's really good question, because I have a cousin sister. She is actually also took a break, and she's also, I suggested her also to learn Azure itself. So I strongly say, because it's easy to learn. It's a good thing with this is that easy to learn, now in trending, and then and also after you get a job also, then you have a lot of opportunities, whether you want to continue with the same thing or you want to further grow and go. So not like a very hectic thing also, job while you're doing job also. So I strongly, and also you'll get a good package as well. So that's the reason I suggest you to learn this, until unless you are like a native developer where you do complete coding. If you're interested in a coding, I will honestly suggest you, if there is a developer who is very much interested in coding, probably I suggest them to go with a different area. But someone like you took some break and want to again start off, I think Azure is a good thing. I have seen a lot of people who started their career with the Azure itself, like learned Azure. You see, you said you have 3 years of experience, right? So you can actually uh, put that experience into as well. So what you can do, you can learn this and you can keep 1 year, last 1 year as a Azure experience, and then you can start trying opportunities.
I have one more doubt. Can we, I mean, what do you say?
Yeah,
I
you
was
can
thinking,
ask in Telugu. No problem.
it's not about Telugu. I just forgot what I thought of asking.
Acha, okay. Yeah, that's okay. So you can ask me when you remember. Okay, so do you have
Yeah,
any other? Yeah,
I got.
okay.
Like,
Okay.
are we provided with the real time like issues like or whatever, for example, you're facing?
So yeah, I'll talk about real-time issues. Whatever I work, I'll talk about issues. But what happens is, I'll be able to talk about some issues, real-time issues also I'll talk. But sometimes what happens is, just to troubleshoot one issue, I'll take about 2-3 hours time, because the issues will be complex sometimes. So those kind of issues, I only will say verbally, this is what you do. You have to follow this step and this step, this step. Some issues we'll try to fix it directly then and there, and some issues I'll tell you the procedure. This is what you have to, this approach you have to follow, because those issues will take more time to actually fix that issue. So that's the reason I'll share a couple of commonly more frequent issues. I think that should really help you. Because in fact, while you are doing a lab itself, we have close to 15 to 16 labs in Azure for you guys to homework, and I myself will share all those labs in a demo, in a screen share. I will show each and everything. Then I'll also share those detailed lab instructions for you to do yourself for practice. So if you do all those while you're doing itself, you might get a lot of questions or doubts. You'll definitely ask me, and that will give me opportunity to explain you further.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you follow along with this training, if you attend this training regularly, and then you also do the labs regularly, and by end of this course, I can assure you that you can directly attempt AZ-104 certification exam. You will clear it, and also immediately after you clear it, you can also start applying for jobs. So you'll also get good opportunities. What I said.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, I'm cleared with my doubts. I'm very poor at coding, so I just had very clear idea that there is no coding and we have a predefined templates in this.
Yes, predefined template. There won't be any coding. That's for sure. Okay, so tomorrow, actually, I'm starting off tomorrow at 9 a.m. So this course is actually designed to start 5 weekends, like another 9 days. Like every Saturday, Sunday, we will cover about 3 hours of course. 3 hours time, I'll give about 15 minutes break in middle, and we'll cover one topic. Only we'll take one topic, and we'll cover for 3 hours in detail. That's what we are going to do for next another, excluding this weekend, another 4 weekends is what we are going to cover this course. Every weekend, Saturday, Sunday, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. is what the timings. that are scheduled for this course. Tomorrow 9 a.m. I'm going to actually start off with the basics, the prerequisites that we have discussed, right? I'm going to start off with those basics, and once the basics are over, tomorrow, next Saturday, I'm going to actually start off with the actual course, Azure Administrator course. So four weekends time, if you completely dedicate, like on every Saturday, Sunday, 3 hours, if you could dedicate to me, and then after 3 hours time on a weekends or weekdays, whenever you get time, at least 2 to 3 hours just for doing lab, if you can dedicate, I think within this 1 month duration, you will fully equipped with this Azure Administrator content.
Okay. And are we given any notes completely like
Yes.
what is all covered and even not covered too?
Yes, so there is nothing like, I'm not going to skip anything. I'll cover everything, and I have prepared a notes for usually the manual will be of 350 to 400 pages, so that will be too much to read. So I have actually prepared a small note with all important things, and I prepared some around 110 pages of note. So I'm going to share that content as well, manual as well with you guys. I'm going to share manual. I'm going to share this recording videos. I'm also going to share lab instruction, detailed lab instructions. And then we'll also share some questions, quiz questions, what kind of questions that you can expect. And then some practice questions for your Azure Administrator itself, final certification exams. So these are all we are going to provide. I'm going to provide to you guys. And these access will be for lifetime, so I'm not going to revoke it. I'll give an entire thing, so you can download and keep it with you also if you want.
Okay. That's nice actually. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so in case if you have any other questions, you can let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have my contact number in the. I'm not sure how you have joined this, but I hope you have the some or the other way my contact number. If you can, I think while you have joined, you might have already submitted the data, right? So I might actually, I'll send you the tomorrow's meeting link. Will remain same, the same link, and for next weekend I'm going to change it. But tomorrow also you can join with the same meeting link at 9 o'clock, and we'll discuss about the basics of it. So see you tomorrow then.
Yeah. What's your good name?
My name is Shankar. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, Shankar. We'll meet tomorrow then.
Okay. Thanks.
If,
Thanks.
can you ping me so that if anything, I have some queries I can ask you, like with respect to the fee structure or.
Sure. So I'm going to reach out to you after this training in WhatsApp. I hope you have given the detail WhatsApp number,
Yes,
right? So I'm going to reach out.
given. Yeah.
I'm going to create a group, in fact, and that group will be used to actually share any updates.
Okay. Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Pavitra and Rama, for taking time and attending this. See you tomorrow. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care. Stay safe.